Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to Mindful Moments. And we are back to our Friday night show where we are talking all about well-being, your well-being, our community's well-being. As you know, I have been continuing a series on domestic abuse. It's been very heavy and tough, especially talking with our guests, but very, very valuable for our community. As you know, my name is Farah, I'm your host, and hopefully today we will have a very special and important episode on domestic abuse. And if you do want to get in contact with us as usual, you can contact us via any of our social media at Inspire, or email us at info@inspirefm.org. If you have any questions, if you want to ask for specific advice relating to domestic abuse, or want to contact any of our guests from the past or today, do get through to us through these contacts and we'll be happy to help you. Okay, I hope you've all had a great week. It's been a long week. I'm hoping the weather is warming up here in the UK, and we might be going into spring a bit prematurely, it seems. It's been quite a warm week. And inshallah, we are also approaching Ramadan soon for those who practice Ramadan. So it's an important series. We'll be having a exciting series by my co-host Yasmin for Ramadan, inshallah. So keep an eye out on that, and also some interesting topics relating to motherhood. But that is for another time. So let's get straight into it. My guest today is someone who has had, unfortunately, a fair share of her experiences in abuse, both physical and psychological. And the pseudonym I'll use for my guest to protect her identity is Noreen. So I will introduce Noreen. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you doing, Noreen?
Alhamdulillah, really well, thank you. Thank you.
Good. And it's been a busy week for you?
Yeah, but it's good to be busy, and the sun's coming out today, so yeah.
It is. It's nice. So Noreen, I really firstly appreciate you coming on. It's a very vulnerable thing and very courageous thing, and admirable to be sharing your experiences with us, inshallah, so that the people can benefit and gain some insight and advice from what you've lived through. And unfortunately, is the case for a lot of people where they do go through this, and then the benefit of it, I guess, is that they're sort of motivated to help others as much as they can through their experiences. So Noreen, if you want to start with, if I can ask you what the summary of your experiences of abuse were regarding your marital situations.
Yeah, I think so I most recently left my husband. I'm not yet divorced. And I'm supported by refuge to flee, but it was a very long and protracted process. And my husband, I thought that he had PTSD, but he was diagnosed with 2 personality disorders, which are very violent and difficult. It became an insurmountable challenge to try and have a marriage. It just became too hard, I think. The easiest way to say it. I couldn't do anything. In the end, I couldn't do anything. So, and I earned more than him, and I had more responsibility for the household than him, and he had his family from a previous marriage. And I think I just got to the point where everything was degraded, everything fell apart. My friends, my family, my finances, my well-being, my physical health, my mental health. I just about held on to my career, and that's it. And my career is my vehicle to get out of the mess that I've been trying to pull myself out of. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So that yeah, gosh, you have been through a lot, and it's all very raw. And what was I going to ask? You're sort of out of that. You're not divorced, but what I guess what you're trying to say is everything that you had because of the complete destructive nature of your marriage, it ended up affecting everything around you and the things that you had, like your finances and your health.
Everything. I don't even now look in the mirror and I do not recognize myself because my body, what it was, my face doesn't look how it was. I've got a stress-related problem now where my hair falls out, my hair sheds. I don't have the hair I used to have. I look at it and I just look at me and I don't even recognize myself.
And did you say that this was this wasn't your first experience, was it?
No, I'd been married before, and he hadn't been diagnosed with personality disorders, but he was violent and financially abusive, and I didn't really see it until a neighbour called the police when he lost it one time. But they were both very controlling, and sometimes you think when someone cares about you so much and is really interested in what you're doing, it's because they love you, but control is not love.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying there. You couldn't actually, you didn't realize there was financial abuse and it was getting quite serious until your neighbor called the police. And I feel like with a lot of women, that's the case where they are so caught up in especially the psychological and emotional abuse that they're not seeing how controlling and manipulative the situation is. What sort of, so just so people can be aware, or like if they see this in themselves or other people, for example, financial abuse, what sorts of things were happening that are now in retrospect, I guess now you can look back and say, yes, that was abuse, but you didn't realize it at the time?
I think it was one of my friends that says like money exposes people, because I used to say money changes people. But one of my friends, he's turned around and said to me, it doesn't change people, it exposes them. That's when you see their core character. That's when you see how they treat you financially. And there were issues with both. And I should have looked at those and I should have thought, if that's how they behave with others, eventually it will be me. I think my first husband saved £98,000 in the year and a half that we were married, but refused to contribute to the home we lived in.
Wow. Okay. So that, in the sense where you were
paying for everything,
you had no choice but to pay for everything because of his actions. Okay. So right. And I guess Islamically, it's interesting because obviously abuse and all these various terms are often here defined by the Western framework, but Islamically, that I wonder if that would come under Islamic. I wonder if there's such a thing as Islamic sort of abuse, because obviously, as our listeners may know, the roles are the husband provides financially and the lady, depending on various opinions, looks after the home. But yes, so he was completely abusing that and not even fulfilling his rights. Okay, interesting. And in terms of emotional or psychological abuse, are there any examples either from your the most recent marriage or the one from before?
Yeah, there's loads. There's so much, and you come back and you think, what on earth was I doing tolerating that?
Yes,
but you don't realize at the time, and it's a very slow, it's like a slow dripping tap that will eventually fill up a bucket.
Yes.
My first husband could have told me that black was white and I would have believed him. I absolutely would have believed him. I had no reason to. But then
that was as in due to the build-up of abuse, not right at the beginning. So often they don't sort of go full-fledged abuse at the beginning. Like you said, they build it up and then by the end of it, you're believing anything he's saying, right?
Yeah. To the point, and I think the point when I so what had happened was that I think with my first husband, when the police were called, he used to get angry and he'd lock my phone in his van and I wouldn't be able to get it, and I just have to wait to have permission to get it back. Or he'd lock me in the back of the van. A couple of times that happened. Then it was like locking the house and I'm stuck inside the fourth floor flat, lock the door from the outside and I can't get out. And I kind of tolerated it, but that's after a good couple of years of like sustained program, and then you don't want to be a failure. And Islamically, like you think, I don't want to look at someone and say they're bad because I have my own character flaws. And I think that was probably one of the big battles, was that, you know, there's that saying, when you point the finger, literally there's three pointing right back at you. And you don't want to say that about that person. You don't want to think that they're like that, and you don't want to be a failure. But actually, what they're doing is wrong. And everything changed. So as soon as I got married, I couldn't wear the clothes I used to wear before I got married.
Okay.
I wasn't allowed to hold my husband's hand down the street.
You wouldn't, sorry, what?
I wasn't allowed to hold my husband's hand walking down the street.
Right, okay.
After I got married to him. I wasn't allowed to wear the Western jeans and hoodies that I was wearing before. They were a problem now because I was married. And the amount of control just started to increase and increase. And it just didn't stop.
What about interaction with other genders, with other men, sorry?
So I work in a male-dominated field. I will quite often be sat on boards where I am the only female, let alone the only Muslim, let alone the only ethnic minority. And I'm used to that, but it would drive me mad. I was accused of having affairs. In my field, people need to be able to contact each other quite quickly. It was always, I think one time my husband found out that my boss was divorced. He threw a table across the room during the working day because we were both working from home.
Right, wow.
I just was like, then you become obsessed with how to keep them calm so you don't lose.
Yes, yeah. And also often we find with a lot of cases that it's all linked. If there is a controlling element, there's also a lot of paranoia and insecurities as well. And I guess that all feeds into the, like you said, the personality disorders or the complexes that the partner is actually suffering. And that's actually coming out in various different ways, like the paranoia. Okay. And if you are comfortable to share, Noreen, in terms of physical experience, before we move on to other topics, what sorts of things did you survive?
So I think the night that, there was sexual abuse, there was physical, there were bruises, there was hair pulling. I actually worked in safeguarding, child safeguarding, and I got injuries that I would read about in children's abuse reports. I'd get petechiae, which is when a blood vessel like bursts in your eye, and I'd only heard about it through reading child abuse reports.
As in from stress or from physical impact?
Physical impact and shouting.
Right, so he would hit you?
Yeah. Pinned up against walls, hands on my throat, just raging, nothing. I think one time the house got smashed up because I'd asked him to help me tidy up, and I was still cleaning up broken glass like 4 months later. So
it sounds.
But in our culture, there's so much stigma. You don't want to fail. You're not.
Yeah, and you don't want to. And during this whole time, presumably you didn't tell any of your family because you didn't want them to worry, or you didn't let anyone know. Even though it was the second time you'd been through it, it gets the same cycle sort of happens, right?
Yeah, you don't want to disappoint your family, and you don't want to put them through it. Sometimes you're like, it's my decision, I made it, I've just got to bear it and deal with it. But you don't want to hurt them. And in our culture as well, and in our religion, the family bond is so important, and being gentle to your parents and being kind, and ultimately your parents will become your children because they're going to need you, and you're going to have to step in if you have that. Allah gives you the opportunity. So you don't want to put them through the trauma of knowing, and you try and protect them, but you're not protecting anyone. You're failing yourself by doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the hardest bit, and there's obviously lots of cases I'm sure you've heard about as well, where the woman is suffering physical and all sorts of abuse for 10, 15, 20 years, and someone from the outside just looks at them and thinks, how are you not telling anyone, and how has no one known about this? And even some people know, and they just don't know what to do about that situation because it's so fragile. Okay, that's That's and are you getting sort of therapy, or how have you dealt with your previous one, and how are you dealing with your current one in terms of your well-being?
I think what it's not there is therapy. I actually started to see an Asian Muslim therapist. I specifically hunted her out because I needed to understand myself as an Asian, as a Muslim. And she was really great. She just said to me, you live outside the box and you think outside the box. And that really helped me accept myself, because I am different, but Allah made me, Allah made you, Allah made us all equal. So the differences that He made in me, maybe they're not that bad. That helped. And I think if you accept yourself, you'll find it easier to not accept the things that are going on that are wrong. So that's helped. It's been quite destabilizing financially. It's been quite difficult. It cost me £4,500 in total to leave. So I had to pay double rents. I had to find alternative accommodation. I had to get moving. I had to get stuff into storage. It was very difficult, but I did it. And the fact that it's crippled me financially has probably added to my resolve, because I can't go back and I can't go through that again. I have been degenerated to the point of having to use food banks and things like that. And I'm a working professional woman. They're really great. I just told them everything, and they've been really kind and helpful. But you have to have no shame and just accept that what's come into your life has happened, and you've tried to get out of it, and you need to do the best you can. There's no merit in staying and keeping them happy. Allah created us to worship Him, and if someone is grinding you down to the point that you can't even breathe to think, you are not serving Allah's purpose in your existence.
And 100%. 100%, and yet everything you're saying is so admirable, Noreen, and so just your resilience. And I said this to you on the phone, you sound like a very adaptable woman, because you've just been through so many different situations that you've just had to be like, okay, I just need to get on with it, and this is it. This is what the cards God has dealt with me, and He doesn't look at the result. He looks at your how you deal with it in the time, and your graciousness in it all, I guess. And you're right, our bodies and our souls and our minds are all a gift from God, and that's our priority. It's not whether someone else is okay whilst they're battering you alive. So yeah, a really important message there. We've actually, so we've not got too long left, but I do want to go on towards sort of the practical tips in terms of red flags, Noreen. So you've survived 2 marriages that have been incredibly abusive. How perhaps will you, going forward, or any advice to women out there, how do you spot these criminals, really, and these abusive people before you get married to them?
The first thing you've got to do is look at how they treat others, not you. That's the first thing, because there's always the honeymoon period. There's love bombing. There's showering you with so much attention that you feel valued and all the rest of it. But how they treat others is how they're going to start treating you, and that's what you need to look at. And what was interesting was that both of them appeared to be so well liked and so on, but as soon as I got out of it, there were a lot of men that said they didn't like them. And I think men see men differently. So hearing it from my colleagues to say there's something shady about that person, they didn't like something about his character, that really impacted me. So I think it is important to ask for opinions, but it's also important to look at how they treat others. It's important to look at who their friends are. And it's important to just be aware of how they treat you financially and others financially. Those, I think, are really big key signs. And I think if I'd listened, I would have, my husband that I've just left, he used to make jokes about me and put me down in the beginning. And instead of just walking away, I used to say to him, like, oh, you really hurt my feelings. Can you not do that again? Actually, what I should have done was that's what his character's like, and just walked away. That's what I should have done. And that I'm not going to go into the degradation that I experienced with him, but it was horrific how he degraded me.
Especially if it's repetitive, then you sort of wake up to a sign and be like, hang on, this is quite a red flag here. Also, what you were saying about how they treat others, I do find with a lot of people that I've spoken to, and you often hear that abusive personalities tend to be really well liked in the community, and they have a very good front in terms of good connections and very nice and well to do. So like it's quite difficult, I feel, in some cases to spot that. But I think the tip you said about the friends, I mean, obviously if you can see that they're being awful with people, that's a blessing that is right there in front of you. But if you can't see that, then next thing you were saying is go to what their friends are like, and that's often a very key thing. And there's often been situations where people are quite tentative about letting their fiance or soon to be wife meet their friendship circle because of that exact reason, or even their family or extended family, because there's just a lot of, skeletons in the closet, as they say. That's a really key point. And what was the other thing? Okay, so, and the other thing I was going to say is words, a lot of words. So I've heard women fall in love, or they are attracted to someone by the words that they hear from the man, and often that's a weakness, because obviously he can say everything you want him to say, and he will say everything that will make you feel, like you said, valued and everything. And also that sort of but then action is very different, and that's why it's, like you said, it's important to see their interactions in various different situations.
So when he was making jokes about me in public, I should have looked at that. And when he was putting me down to other people, I would have looked at that and said, his actions do not value me and do not care about me. And that's where I went wrong, because his words, I just was like, yeah, that's what he says. But then we have neurodiversity in our family. So, and my type of neurodiversity means I'm more likely to trust you and your words, because why would you lie to me? Because the way my brain's wired. So I think there is something about knowing yourself as well, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. Knowing
you'll know, that what you won't pick up or will pick up as well. But absolutely, there's nothing. There's that thing in the Quran that people debate about, the admonishing your wife comment. But there is nothing in our religion that says we are there to tolerate and carry another human being who is putting us and darkening, putting a shade over us and limiting our light and our potential. That's not marriage in Islam. It might say marriage is half your deen, if you are blessed with the opportunity. But if it doesn't come, your purpose here is to worship Allah and do your best and live your best life. That is what you have to do. And if
exactly,
then you are not fulfilling your purpose Islamically, no matter what any patriarchal conditioning tells you.
Yes, 100%. And it's meant that, like, there's verses, like you said, in the Quran that talk about marriage being tranquility, and that's the goal of it, so that you can reach God, and it's meant to be a vehicle for you in a positive way. So yeah, that's
to cover each other.
Yeah, the garments. That's it.
You don't wear garments made of thorns.
Yeah, exactly. And we won't have time to talk about sort of the childhood trauma aspect today, but what I would say is, obviously, Noreen, you mentioned you've had that experience in your background as well, but just in a few seconds, how important is it to work on your traumas before you get into a relationship, and why?
Sure. I think we're from a diaspora. We come from countries that had problems. Our grandparents saw invasions, colonialism, lived through imperialism, all of that stuff. That's not far from us. It's happening now with Gaza. So we come from backgrounds of trauma, which means people will carry trauma. And we might live in households where there is trauma, manifest through what our parents have been through. And we need to understand what good love is and what healthy love is. And if you understand what healthy love is, then you'll accept that. And perhaps some of the conditioning that we've lived with through our very existence, perhaps you can then kind of tip the balance a bit.
Thank you so much. That is actually, I think, the best thing to end on, because I think it's everyone listening I think needs to assess their life, assess their childhood. You don't have to have gone through like huge traumas, or just know, like you said earlier, know yourself. And for especially like you said, the diaspora, there is intergenerational trauma. Look at yourself and don't be afraid to work on things that will help you grow and be a better person and foster and nurture beautiful relationships that are healthy and not toxic, right? Noreen, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for sharing your incredibly difficult experiences and everything you've been through. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And hopefully, so many people have benefited by listening to this. And everyone else, thank you for listening, and I will see you. I think I've got one more episode left in this series. It's been incredible, but thank you, and we'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.